Hello, my name is Joel Thornton. In this tutorial I will be demonstrating how to build a low polygon hand in Autodesk Maya 2012. This hand here that we are about to construct basically has the correct edge loop parameterization for a low poly video game hand and or high resolution film asset. You could build this thing completely in Autodesk Maya, or you could export this hand into Pixelogic ZBrush to finish it off, whichever you choose basically. Show you here a little bit about the structure. This is the low poly hand with a poly smooth apply. If I go ahead and change the divisions back to 0, we can see here the base mesh. Basically the strength of this mesh is that it is parameterized the same for each of the fingers as it is for the thumb, and I can demonstrate that by going into the Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop tool. I'm going to go ahead and reset the tool, and I'm going to select multiple edge loops, and for number of edge loops I'm going to set it to 1. And if you'll notice here that when I go ahead and insert an edge loop on the top of the thumb, it goes ahead and runs the loop all the way around the under of the thumb and around the sides. If I do it again, it does it again, all the way around the thumb to the side of the hand. And then if I go ahead and start subdividing the sides of the fingers, they'll run perfectly around the sides of the thumb, as well as when I do the subdivide the tops of the fingers. My edge parameterization will not jump a track and subdivide something that I don't want to be subdivided. It only subdivides basically where I want it to be subdivided. I can also increase the edge parameterization in the base of the palm of the hand also. You want to be a little bit careful. One limitation of it is that if you go ahead and start adding more edge loops here, you have to be aware that you're also going to add the edge loops to the thumb itself around the back side. Now that can be fine, just as long as you're aware that if you go ahead and add some more edge loops to get more detail here with the mesh, it's going to run around the back side and maybe just cause you a little bit more time later down the road. So be aware of that. What I tend to do is leave the thumb alone once I've inserted the edge loops like so. So I've got basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges on each finger. That's where I tend to leave it, and then what I like to do is do the rest of the mesh, find micro detail and whatnot in ZBrush and or using a displacement map. I use displacement maps mostly, but if you're a ZBrush person, this would also work, since ZBrush is essentially using a displacement map to generate a high detail mesh. Alright, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and create a new scene. I don't want to save that. I'm going to turn my grid back on. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a image plane in my top orthographic viewport. So I'm going to go View, Image Plane, Import Image. And I want to select my hand ref redux image, and you'll see there it just pops into the viewport, and I can see it in my top view. That's going to be my reference for the scene. So something about view image planes in Maya is that they can be a little cumbersome, and what I mean by that is they can be a little confusing in terms of how to manipulate them. So if you see here, I've selected this image plane, and it looks like I could just go ahead and hit the W key and move it. However, when I do that, nothing happens. And the reason for that is because the image plane is actually a input node to the camera. And so in this case, it's an input node into the top orthographic viewport camera. So if I want to manipulate that thing, what I have to do is select the top viewport camera, and then if I click on the image plane under the channel box, which is an input into that camera, then I can get to the parameters that are available to me to basically move or scale or do whatever I want with this image plane. So the one you want to worry about, I believe, is center Y. and that'll allow you to move the image plane up or down. What I like to do is just move it down a bit. You can see here that the screen grid is still visible, so I'm just going to go ahead and unhide that by clicking on the Show Hide Screen Grid here in my perspective view. I'm also going to hide the screen grid in the top view because it's kind of going to be in the way when we actually start modeling here. So that's the image plane. Again, it is an attribute that is piped into the top viewport camera, and the way that you can move it is not by selecting it and moving it, but by first selecting the top viewport camera. So select camera, and then going into the inputs in the channel box and manipulating it in that way. Now, another thing that is a little weird about image planes is that you can't delete them. So if I select this image plane and I hit the delete key, you see I get this little error, non-deletable node, and I can't get rid of it. So you might ask, what do I do, if I create this thing and I don't want it anymore, or I messed it up and I just want to start over? Well, the answer to that is you're going to have to go into the window pane here. So the top menu set, you want to go to Window, and then you want to open the Hypergraph Hierarchy, and this little window opens up, and you can see here that we have the top viewport camera selected, and we can't at this point see anything else going on. And the reason for that is because we can't see the input and output connections. In order to see them, what we need to do is select the node here and then click on this little button right here, which will display the input and output connections. Once we do that, we can see the image plane, and we got this little connection here. There's two ways you can get rid of it. You can just select that connection and break it. So all I did was selected that connection and hit delete, and that breaks the connection. Or you can select the image plane itself and delete it, and that would do the exact same thing. Once you've done that, you can get out of it. In this case, we didn't want to delete it, so I'm just going to go ahead and create a new one just to show you guys how that's done again. So I'm going to go to View, Image Plane, Import Image, and then I'm going to go up one directory here, select my hand ref redux. Again, if I want to manipulate its position, I have to go to View, select Camera, and the top viewport because that's where I created it. And I'm going to use the center Y, and I'm just going to drop it down a couple units. The way I'm doing that is I've just selected, I've highlighted the center attribute in the channel box, and then I'm holding down the middle mouse button in the viewport to basically enable the spinner to move the image plane up or down without actually having to go in here and type a value. Or you could just go in here and type a value. It's up to you. So you get -4. I kind of like the -5, so that's what I'm going to leave it at. And that's it. Now that we've got that, we're ready to start modeling. Another thing that you should be aware of is how to hide image planes. It looks like my camera focal length, it looked weird. It's actually at 35, so I'm going to leave it alone. I was going to fix that if it wasn't. The way to hide an image plane is very simple. If you want to show or hide it, you just go to Show, Cameras, and basically that's just a toggle. It's either on or off. So it's either showing the cameras or it's not. So Show Cameras, and that's it. And that's a setting that is toggleable for any viewport. So for example, I can hide the cameras in my orthographic top viewport. So if I go to Cameras here, and I can still have it visible in my perspective viewport. So that's worth noting. Alright, I'm going to turn it back on because I actually want to start modeling. Okay, so we're ready to go. What I want to do first is go into my top orthographic viewport, and I'm just going to go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Cube, and I'm just going to draw a cube here kind of at the base of the wrist. I'm going to click over here in the perspective view to give it some height. And then my wrist, if I look at it, is about twice as wide as it is tall. Maybe the ratio is something like 4 to 3. So I'm going to do about that here with my polygon primitive. Once I've done that, I want to go into vertex mode. So I'm going to select on the mesh that I just created, and I'm going to say vertex. And then I want to marquee drag in the top view because I want to move these vertices. The difference between marquee dragging and just click selecting, so marquee select versus just click select, if you look in the perspective view here, If I just click select on this vertex, notice what happens. It only selects one vertex at a time. If I marquee select, it's going to select all the vertices top to bottom. So you want to be aware of that. Whenever you hear me say marquee select, you definitely want to do that, because if you click select by accident and I wanted you to move both vertices simultaneously, you'll see here that when you go to move it, you're only going to move one, and then your mesh is going to be a little bit messed up versus what we intended in this tutorial. So just please be aware of that when you're moving stuff. So here I'm going to marquee select and just move those verts like so, and that looks good. Alright, now I'm going to go into the perspective viewport, and I'm going to hit F8 so that I can get into object mode first, so that my sub-object options will pop up when I right-click on the mesh. So now I have right-clicked on the mesh here, and I want a face, so I'm going to select the face here. I just hit the 5 key because I want to go ahead and shade this geometry now. So once I have this face selected, I want to go ahead and extrude it. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, and then I want to click on this little manipulator here, which is going to flip me between local mode and world mode in terms of manipulation of my face, my polygon. That's important to note because after you start working on your meshes a lot, basically if you're in local mode, you can get some unintended translations that you don't want. And I might be able to demonstrate that a little bit more clearly as we get going. Right now my mesh is too clean, so it's not really apparent. I'll show you that a little bit later as we get going. So I'm going to select the mesh again here, and I want to go to vertex mode this time. So I'm going to right click on it and select vertex mode, right click, vertex. I want to marquee select because I want to select all the vertices simultaneously, and I'm going to go ahead and move the verts about like that. Right now we're building the palm of the hand. We really are not paying any attention to the thumb at this moment in time, so that's why we move the vertices over here on this side. What you want to do is you just want to kind of straddle the joints here on these bones. And then we're going to go ahead and do that again. I'm going to right click over my mesh here, and I want to extrude one more time, so I'm going to say Edit Mesh, Extrude. If you want to change the size of your extrusion manipulator, basically the hotkey for that is plus or minus. So right now I'm just hitting the minus key, which is making my manipulator much smaller. If I hit the plus key and my manipulator gets bigger, that's nice to know. Because it can be a little cumbersome when the thing starts flying off the frame on you. Again, I want to select this little button here, and I want to flip between local and world mode. I want world mode because I just want to move this thing completely straight, and I don't want it to start flying off in an unintended direction. Now that I've done that, I'm going to marquee drag in the top view here. And I just want to move these vertices to be about like that, so they about straddle those bones right there. And that looks pretty good. Okay. At this point, we want to just go ahead and add one more edge along here for the palm of the hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, and I'm going to say Insert Edge Loop. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to show you the difference here between Insert Edge Loop manual and Insert Edge Loop with multiple edge loops. So right now we're in manual mode, and if you'll notice here that wherever I click, it's going to add a loop, right? Oops. And I just messed it up. Wherever I click, it's going to insert an edge loop. I don't know what I did. Hold on one second. Wherever I click, it's going to insert an edge loop. Versus if I go ahead and click this little button here, multiple edge loops, and I change this to a value of say 1, what it'll do is no matter where I click, it'll put that edge loop at exactly the center of these two sets of edges. That can be important at times. Sometimes you want it to be right down the middle. Sometimes you want it to be where you want it. In this case, I want it right down the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and go into, I'll reset the tool here, I'm in the Insert Edge Loop tool, so let's just go ahead and open it again. Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop tool, Settings, and I want to select multiple edge loops, and then I want to change the number of edge loops to 1. Now wherever I click, it's just going to drop it right down the middle. That looks good. Alright, so now I just want to go into regular mode here, and I want to select vertex mode. At this point, if you look at the side of your hand, you'll notice that from your palm to where your fingers go onto your hand kind of tapers. And so what we're doing here is I'm just selecting all these verts down here, which represent the palm of your hand, and then this would be the base of your palm. And I just want to move those up so that we kind of get that taper effect of the hand. And generally, we're going to insert some fingers here at some point, so we're going to have 1, 2, 3 fingers. So you just want to make it so once we add our finger holes that these are all going to be roughly square. So that's pretty good. Alright, at this point we can also go to face mode, and I'm going to select the base of the wrist here. And I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, and I'm going to extrude it, and click for world mode. And I'm going to move this down a little bit also, and then I don't want to scale it. I actually want to select the vertices here. And this is kind of more of the wrist here. And I'm just going to pull these up like so, so that we kind of have our wrist going into our hand. The beginnings of that. Okay, at this point that's looking pretty good. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and insert my edge loops for my finger holes. So I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop tool, open up the settings, I want to reset it. This time I want to select multiple edge loops, and the number I want to set to 3, I believe. And then now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 holes for our fingers to go into, and that's what we wanted, so that looks good. Okay, and then at this point I want to go ahead and insert another set of edges along the side. So just to be redundant, I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop tool. I always like to reset this tool the moment I open it, just because I don't know, what I did before. I don't know what setting I had or what I was trying to do. So I always just reset it back to 1, and then from there you know that there's no settings tweaked, and you're going to kind of get what you want. So this time I wanted to do multiple edge loops in 1 because I wanted this edge to go right down the center of the hand, and that looks good. Alright, so now at this point we've got our hand starting to take a little bit of shape. Right now it's pretty blocky, but we got the base of the palm here. We got the part where the pads are going to go underneath the knuckles on the front of the hand. And now what we want to do is we really just want to start shaping this thing a little bit. So what I just did there is I hit the 3 key, and what that is kind of a real-time subdivision surface preview of our mesh. It's not actually doing anything to the mesh, it's really just a visual preview. The keys for that are 3 for the sub-D preview, 1 for my polygon that I started with, 2 shows the sub-D preview and the polygon control cage, and then 3 is just the sub-D preview. So let's go back to 1. Now what I want to do is I just want to go around my mesh here, and I want to add a little shape. So I'm going to select, actually before I do that I want to go ahead and extrude from my thumb first. So what I'm going to do here is I want to go into face mode, and I'm going to select these 2 faces right here, which represent my thumb hole, where the thumb is going to extrude out from my mesh. And I'm going to say Edit Mesh, Extrude, and then I'm going to click the little icon here, this little thing that kind of looks like a power button on a Mac, and that's going to flip me into world mode instead of local mode. Then I'm going to pop over to the top view, orthographic, and I'm going to right click on my mesh and go to vertex mode. And I want to marquee select so that I'm selecting both the top and bottom verts. And I really am just going to want to kind of place these so that they straddle this joint here for this bone. The way your hand breaks down is, a lot of people think that your thumb only has 2 knuckles. So here's knuckle 1, knuckle 2, if I were counting from the tip backwards. So under this finger we've got, on your index, we've got knuckle 1 and knuckle 2, and then knuckle 3. Well, your thumb actually has 3 joints. One of them just happens to be hidden inside your palm, the palm of your hand. So what we're going to try to do here is we're going to try to put 3 edges on each joint. And so we're going to put, we got 1 edge, 2 edges, we just need a 3rd one on this side of the joint. So let's go ahead and go back to the perspective view. I'm going to go to face mode. I'm going to select both of those faces there again. And at this point, because my last operation, no it's not, so it's not going to work. If I go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, oh yeah it was. If I go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, notice here that I can extrude it again that way, or if my last operation was extrude, all I have to do is hit the G key and it's just going to repeat the function. So again, I'm going to hit the manipulator to go from local to world mode. You want to be careful with that though, guys, because if you get kind of happy and you don't know what you're doing and you start hitting the G key, you can end up with faces that are overlapping each other, and you can get corrupted geometry, and we don't want that. So if though you are in a position here where, let's say you're working on your mesh and all of a sudden things are acting a little freaky on you and you don't know what's up, you have a couple options at your disposal. The first of which is to go to Edit, Delete by Type, History, and that'll delete the history for your object. If that doesn't solve your problem, you can go into vertex mode, select all your vertices, and you can say Edit Mesh Merge. I always like to reset this too, and go ahead and say Apply. And what that's going to do is, if you had any duplicate faces or duplicate vertices, it's going to weld them all down to one, and that can solve your problem either. Or your third option, let's say you can't figure out what's going on with your mesh, but you know that it's not quite functioning properly. You can select the mesh and you can say Edit or File, Export Selection, open up the dialog box. You want to select file type for the export and say OBJ export. Turn off all the file specific options to off. And what that does is essentially gets rid of any history you have on that object that could potentially be causing problems. Then you click on Export Selection and asks you where you want to save it. At this point, I always do temp 1, so I'm going to say temp 1, export, yes, I want to replace it. At this point, you could just go ahead and create a layer here and hide the existing object, and then go to Import and import your newly cleaned object and see if it solved your problems. If it's not, then if it has not solved your problems, then you got bigger problems. And you probably have to ask me how to fix it, and hopefully I can help you fix it. But you know, sometimes we can't. Sometimes meshes get really messed up. So now I want to go ahead and start shaping this mesh a little bit. So I'm going to grab the bottoms of the thumbs here, kind of add a little bit of shape. I want to start along the top of the mesh. And basically I just want to kind of remove all the boxiness from everything. So I'm going to go all the way around my mesh, and anything that has a boxy edge to it, I'm going to attempt to get rid of. And this is where the modeling comes in, you know. Depending on what you're building, you kind of have to start making decisions at this point as to where you're going to move things based on what it is that you're actually trying to build. In this case, I'm starting to just merge the thumb hole down, because my thumb actually moves away from my hand at kind of an angle. compared to the rest of my fingers. And we can demonstrate that a little bit later if you don't know what I'm talking about. You can just hold tight and you'll see it once we start merging the fingers onto the hand. Alright, so we're going to round the sides here. We got that side done. And we just keep going around. Okay, that's the top part. Now let's go around and do the bottom. Like to just move it up, fit in. It's not going to be perfect at this stage in the game. Now would be a good time. My image plane's starting to get in my way, so I'm going to go to Show, Cameras, and I'm just going to get rid of that for a second. And move these in, move these up. Like so. And be careful on that one because we don't have enough edges to really do this yet. So I'm going to keep going around here. And move it in and out. And then the same thing for the bottom here. And move this in and out. And now the base of our wrist is a little bit rounded. The palm is probably a little bit exaggerated from what it's going to be, but that's okay. Something like that, and then if I hit the 3 key, and we can look at it, and it's becoming a little bit more organic. At this point, we can just add a slight amount of arch down the center of the palm, very slight, something like that. And then we also want to go ahead and just add a little bit of arc here for where our fingers are going to go in. So what I'd like to do is I just like to go ahead and select. I'll first go to wireframe mode so that I can make sure I'm getting the right vertices selected. And then I'm going to go to marquee select here. I'm just going to drag around these guys. And first I'm going to move them up a little bit. And then I'm going to deselect these side verts, and I'm going to move them up a little bit too. So what I'm doing is I'm just getting a gentle arc there for the palm of my hand. It's just a little bit more of a natural profile and a little bit more consistent with the way your hand is actually shaped. Okay, that looks pretty good. Alrighty. So at this point, we could also go ahead and add another edge loop right here to give a little bit more definition for the wrist. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say, somehow I got into surfaces mode, so I'm going to go into polygon mode and say edit mesh, insert edge loop tool. This time I want it to be a manual insert, and I just want to go ahead and I don't know, put an edge right about there, representing the spot where my wrist kind of goes into the palm of my hand. And then now I'm able to go ahead and take these vertices here and just pull those down a little bit like so, so that we just get a little bit better wrist shape there. And then now these guys are pretty over exaggerated, so I'm going to bring those down a little bit, bring those back, something like that. Hit the 3 key to take a preview of what I'm doing. That looks pretty good. Alright, so what we got here is we got the base of the palm of the hand, and then here we got the wrist. And I just wanted a little bit more of a break there than what I had. So I could even exaggerate that a little bit more. That's looking a lot better. Alright, so that's good enough. Whenever I'm doing these tutorials, I always have to resist the urge to model stuff. So if you see me modeling stuff and you just want me to get on to the next step, I apologize. It's a force of habit. I need to remember that I'm trying to show you how to do it, not actually build it. Alright, so we got the base of the palm here built. We're to the position now where we should go ahead and start building our fingers. As you guys know, it's a good idea now, once you get to a significant stage in any project that you're building, that it's always a good idea to save. So I'm going to hit the little save key here, and I'm just going to call it human hand 02, and I'm going to save that. And then I always like to, save 2 instead of 1, because now I've got multiple copies. So I'm going to go to Save Scene As, and I'm going to just click on that mesh, and I'm going to change it to 3, and now I've got 2 copies of the same file. Okay, now we got our palm built out. We're ready for the next phase of the project, which is to go ahead and start building the fingers. And the way we're going to do that for this tutorial is we're going to use a polygon cylinder. And I just noticed as I'm looking at this hand model here from the top view that I actually forgot to do a step with you guys, so let's go ahead and do it now. All is not lost. It's not a big deal. I forgot to shape the top of the hand here for the bones. So we want to do that, so I'm just going to select these vertices here, and what we want to do is move them up so that they straddle the joints here between the carpals and the phalanges. There we go. And then you just want to select these guys, and you're just going to run them down the splits of the metacarpals. And then the metacarpals kind of hit the carpals, but then they come to a point here where the tendons run down the back of your fingers. So what we want to do here is we want to grab these, and I'm in a non-uniform scale, and I'm just going to pinch those in a little bit, like so. And it's pretty good, except for I didn't want to do it on the bottom, so I'm going to grab those, and I'm going to... However, I do want it to happen here, so I'm going to grab these, and I want to pinch those in a little bit. Alright, that's looking good, top and bottom. Let's go ahead and build the fingers out. Alright, this would be a good point for me to explain something else. Whenever you're modeling your mesh, what happens is the smoothing groups can get kind of messed up, and I can illustrate that by, I'm going to go ahead and just select a bunch of edges here, and I'm going to go to normals, set normal angle. I'm going to change this to 180, and I'm going to go ahead and apply it. If you ever see this, so you got a mesh and it just kind of looks wrong, it looks a little weird and funky to you. The way to fix that, I like to model with everything very faceted and looking like it is on the left here rather than smooth like on the right here. That looks weird to me and I can't really see what's going on. So if that happens to you, you got 2 options. You can just select your object here, your polygon mesh, and you can say normals, set normal angle. You can drop that all the way down to 0 and say apply. Or if you want to smooth them, you like the smooth look better, totally again up to you. You can select the mesh and you can say normals, set normal angle, and generally you want to set it to about 90 and say apply, and then it'll kind of smooth everything off. Again, I don't like that, so I would either do it through normal, set normal angle and set it to 0, or you can just go to these shortcuts here, which is normals, harden edge, or normals, soften edge. And they basically do the same thing as doing it manually. It's just that they make it a one-click instead of actually having to change a parameter. So again, I like hard, so I'm going to do normals, harden edge, and there we go. Good to go. Alright, let's build this finger out. I'm going to go into the top view, orthographic, and I'm going to say create polygon primitives cylinder. I'm going to click in my top view, and I want my cylinder to be about the width of my finger on the illustration here. I'm going to then pop over into perspective view and finish the height of this thing. And somehow I'm locked up, so can't undo. Strange. Alright, let's do this again. So I'm going to go ahead and go to create polygon primitives cylinder. Again, I want to make it about the width of that middle finger there in the top. Now I'm going to go ahead and give it a height, and I'm going to go ahead and complete that action. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit E for rotate, and I'm just going to rotate this finger here down -90 degrees. At this point, I want to move the cylinder's center so that it's at the base of the finger. So I can do that by just holding down the D key to temporarily enable the center, the pivot manipulator, or I can hit the insert key and move it down, and then hit the insert key to get back out of it. Either way works, it's up to you. Now I'm going to go ahead and move the finger up here to the top of the illustration. And that's pretty good here. What you want is you want your cylinder to be, the length of it to basically come up here and cut this kind of hemisphere in half. So I could go ahead and scale that, or I could also come down here into the inputs and the construction history and just change the height here. So notice here that when I changed the height in the construction history, it didn't pay any attention to my the changing of the pivot, so I'm just going to move that up a little bit, and that's good. Okay, at this point I'm going to go ahead and move my cylinder down so that it basically takes up the hole where it's going to get inserted here in a little bit. And now what I want to do is I want to change the number of subdivisions in the subdivision axis, and I want to change it to 8. So subdivision axis 8, and then subdivision axis height, I want to go ahead and give it a setting of 9. By setting it 9, it's actually going to give me 10 edges if I count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So sometimes in Maya, you have to go one less than the number you want in order to get the number you want. Alright? So now that I have the cylinder here created, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a layer for it, and I'm going to hide it, and then I'm going to create a layer for the palm also, so I can hide both objects. And what I want to do here is I want to go into face mode, and I'm going to select all the faces there at the end by marquee dragging, and then I'm going to control click to deselect the faces I don't want, and then I just get the cap, and I'm going to delete them. So again, marquee drag to select all these faces, control select to deselect the faces I don't want, and I'm going to delete the cap there. That looks pretty good. That's what I wanted. Alright, now I'm going to hit the F8 key to go into object mode, and what I want to do here is I want to create what's going to become a fingertip for this model. So I'm going to go to create polygon primitives sphere, and now I'm going to hold down the V key for snap to vertex temporarily, and I just want to create my sphere so that its center is right there on that vertex. And then I'm going to hit the E key to rotate it 90 degrees so that the poles of the sphere are facing on the opposite sides of the finger. So I'm going to change that to -90. And now I can go ahead and drag this sphere down into place. I also want to change the construction parameters on this to, I believe it's 8 in subdivision axis and 4 in subdivision height, and see what happens there. Now that sphere fits perfectly on the tip of that cylinder, and this is what's going to become our tip of the finger. So now I can hide that cylinder layer, and what I want to do is go into face mode on the sphere there, and I want to delete the back side of it, and then I want to go go ahead and go into object mode, and I want to select both of the cylinder and the sphere that I just cut in half, and I want to go to mesh, combine to make them one, and then I want to go into vertex mode, and I want to go ahead and weld all these vertices together. And you can see here that the vertices are not welded because they're apart from each other. So I want to go to edit mesh, merge, and I'll try the default setting right now, but they're too far apart, so I just need to change that from a 0.01 to a 0.1, and there we go. Now we see them all pop into line, and they're all merged and welded. That's great. That's what we wanted. And then now what I want to do here is I have a couple of triangles here. See, we got a 1, 2, 3 and a 1, 2, 3, and what we want to do is make this into a quad. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The way we're going to do that is we're going to go into edge mode, and we're going to select the edges on this side, and we're going to select the edges on the opposite side also. And then now we're going to go to edit mesh, delete edge / vertex. And now what we have is a quad on the sides of this cylinder rather than a tri, and that's just going to make our lives easier later down the road as we modeling this thing and sculpting it in Maya, and or if you want to take it into ZBrush, it'll be a lot cleaner if it doesn't have any triangles. So at this point we have what kind of looks like a test tube, and if I hit the 3 key to smooth it out, if that's what we were modeling, we would have done a great job on that. But we're modeling the tip of it, or we're modeling a finger. So now that we have the correct number of edges and the correct parameterization for the edge loops, now we can go ahead and start adding shape to this thing. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and go edit, delete by type history, because I want to clean up the history on this thing before I start shaping it. And I'm going to go ahead and unhide my palm here, and we're going to go ahead and continue doing a little bit more modeling. Okay, believe it or not, we're getting very close to being finished with the first stage of the hand model. So let's keep going here. Let's go ahead and start shaping this finger here. So I'm going to pop over to the orthographic view, and I'm going to go into vertex mode. And at first I'm just going to shape it here from the top view. So if we grab here, let's start from the top. If we grab here, these set of edges, they represent the knuckle here, 1, 2, and 3. And we just want to straddle it along the knuckle, and then I'm going to non-uniform scale these vertices down. What I mean by non-uniform versus uniform is that I'm scaling in one axis here instead of grabbing the center here and scaling all in one, which would give me very different results. So I'm going to select these and scale down, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the center of the knuckle here, and I'm going to non-uniform scale that down a little bit. These I'm just going to go ahead and leave alone for now. We also could go ahead and taper the top of the finger a little bit if we wanted to. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to leave it alone for there. Now we can go into the side view, and we're going to start adding a little bit of shape here. So I'm going to grab here these edges that represent the top of the knuckle, and I just want to pull up that one a little bit, and then these 3 also. If you look at your finger from the side, you'll also notice that it tapers, similar to the way the palm does, from the fattest point at the base to the thinnest point at the top. So now would be a good time to just go ahead and grab all these verts here and just non-uniform scale those down a bit, and then do the same thing here. And then I'm going to move those up. Actually, that looks pretty good, so I'm going to leave those right there. Alright, the next thing we can do is we can start adding some shape to the side of the finger. Right now, probably don't really have enough edge loops to kind of fatten the fingers up, so totally acceptable for us to go ahead and add some extra edge loops in order to be able to do that. So I'm going to go into Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop Tool, reset it. Insert edge loops. These I want to be right at the middle, so I'm going to go ahead and do one. I'm just going to go ahead and add some extra loops here, and that looks pretty good. And now what we can do is we can go into vertex mode. I actually want to go into my orthographic viewport, my side view. And now if I wanted to go ahead and kind of fatten my fingers, I would actually have enough edges to do that. With my fingers, the fatness kind of happens right up at the base where the crease is. So that's what I'm doing there. And then same thing on the tip here, it's just after the knuckle. And then now what we want to do is I want to grab these verts here and I want to bring them down and start building the tip of the finger and the nail bed. So I'm grabbing these, and that looks pretty good. We got our knuckle, we got a slight bump there after the knuckle. And then now we have the nail bed here. So these two faces represent the nail bed. So I'm going to round this off a little bit to the back for my fingernail. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and grab these guys, these two verts here. And I'm just going to scale those in a little bit. That's looking pretty good. Okay. And we've got the nail bed here for our finger. And that's looking pretty good. So we're ready to go ahead and model the fingernail. This is a little tricky, and I also want to mention that some people were asking, would you do this a different way if you were building a game model, etc.? And the answer is yes. If I were doing this, well, that's not true. Depending on the game and the engine, you may want to do the fingernail using a normal map. However, if you were building a hero character, you may want to go ahead and model a fingernail. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm making a model that's kind of friendly for a lot of different things. I work in the film industry, so if I were doing a character for a film, I would absolutely model fingernail. The only difference between that model and the model I'm showing you is that I would separate the fingernail as a separate object. And in this model, I'm going to model the fingernail and leave it attached. Again, super easy for you to detach it if you wanted to at a later stage. This method, for simplification's sake, I'm just going to leave it attached. Alright, so now that we have our baseline here for our nail bed, the only other thing we need to do is add an extra edge so that we can have the effect where the cuticle kind of wraps around the finger and then starts falling off the side as the fingernail grows out from the finger. Alright, so in order to get that effect, we're going to have to add one extra edge. So I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop Tool. I'm going to open up the settings. I want to reset the tool. This time I just want to do it manually, so I'm going to go ahead and insert it right there. And that looks pretty good, so we're going to keep going. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into face mode and I'm going to select these four faces, and they're actually going to become the basis for our fingernail. So I'm going to select these faces and I'm going to go ahead and extrude them. So I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Extrude. Notice here this is a perfect example of the difference between world mode and local mode. So right now the manipulation for this extrusion is in local mode, and that can be demonstrated by the fact that this manipulator is basically perpendicular to this polygon right here. So if I were to extrude this, you can see here that it's going to extrude and it's going to kind of give it a keystone effect as it goes out, or it's going to do the opposite as it goes in. I actually don't want that, so I want it to go straight down, and that's why I clicked the little ring icon here to flip into world mode before I do this. So I just want to extrude it straight down. And what I'm doing here is I'm extruding down to be about what I believe would be the width of a fingernail plus a cuticle. Okay. but I'm going to do it 4 times that are going to make up that distance. So my first extrusion, I'm going to do it 3 times. My first extrusion, I'm going to go down a little bit. Then I'm going to hit the G key. I want to flip to world mode. And I want to go down a little bit. G key one more time. World mode again. Go down. This one I'm going to go farther. And what's going to happen here is this distance from here to here is going to become my fingernail, and these edges over here are going to become my cuticle. Okay? It's kind of hard to see that right now, but it'll make sense after I do this once. So I'm going to go to edge mode, and I'm going to select these 2 edges here. I'm going to move them forward and down. I'm going to select these edges here, move them forward and down. And I'm going to select these edges here, next one down, and I'm going to go forward and down. And what I've done here is I've built the base of my thumb, where the fingernail then basically is going to grow out right on top of that. So if I hit the 3 key, we can see here that we've got a divot where our fingernail needs to go. We've got the tip of the finger where it represents the area of skin underneath the fingernail. And now we need to go ahead and create a fingernail. So let's go ahead and do that. Before I do that, what I like to do here is just go into vertex mode and grab these 2 vertices here on the cuticle, where it's going to fall off the sides. And I just want to pull those out a little bit. Just going to make it a little bit nicer. It's also going to make it a little bit easier for you to grab those points at a later time without them kind of getting lost. And so I'm going to just do that, same thing there. And then at this point, if you wanted a little asymmetry in your model, you could move those on your own. Okay, and then if I hit the 3 key, we can see the effect of that. 1 to go back to my control cage. And then now, what I want to do is I want to go to face mode, and I'm going to select these 6 polygons here, which are going to become my fingernail. And I'm going to go ahead and extrude those. And I'm going to go into world mode here to extrude this up. And then I'm going to hit the G key again. Click the little icon here to go to world mode. I'm going to go up again. Looks pretty good. And then I'm going to hit the G key again. Ooh, I don't know what I did, but my manipulator disappeared. If that ever happens, sometimes you can't get it back, but if your manipulator ever disappears, and you can get it back, it's this little button here on the left. I was lucky enough it allowed it to come back. And I'm going to just go ahead and finish that extrusion that I was doing. Hit the G key again, world mode, extrude up again. And I want this fingernail to kind of stop right there at the base of that edge right there, because that's where my cuticle is going to start flowing over the top of my fingernail, basically. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I got a slight artifact here because I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. So I'm trying to race through and get this thing done in a time frame. But I kind of accidentally ended up with like a little pitch there in the fingernail, which I don't want. So I just wanted to fix that. Alright, so what I want to do here is now go ahead and grab these vertices right here. And I'm going to hit the R key, and I'm just going to uniform scale those guys down. And what that is I'm pulling those down to basically give me the cuticle for the fingernail. Pull those down. These ones here on the side here, I went and moved, And you can see here they're giving me a little grief, as well as this one at the side. Sometimes you're just going to have to move those yourself, one at a time, in order to get the desired effect. So I'm going to do that here. There we go. So the sides here is where it gets a little tricky. And see what I'm doing? I'm just trying to basically make the cuticle fold over on itself, so that when I smooth it with the 3 key, we kind of get that effect here. So see how the cuticle folds down over the side of the fingernail, and the fingernail kind of grows out the side. You might just have to do this a few times to get the knack for how this is all working. I know it's confusing to look at. You see me pulling a bunch of points, and you're probably saying to yourself, what's he doing? But my advice to you is to just do it a couple times, and then you'll kind of get it. So basically I'm building this model in a manner to where my control cage is always, I always have the intention of smoothing that cage later to get the desired effect. And in this case, it's to have a realistic fingernail growing from underneath a cuticle, and that looks just like the skin and cuticle of a regular old finger. Alright, so we've accomplished that. I'm going to go ahead and show you one more thing. So this is kind of, for a man or a child's fingernail. And it looks like about like that, with the cuticle growing over it. At this point, you could also start shaping your finger to any degree, basically. If to me that looks a little fat, so if you wanted to come in and thin it up, you could do that. Again, in these exercises, I'm not really doing a complete demo on shaping of things. I'm more or less showing you the protocol for how to arrange things, and I'm relying on you guys as artists to figure out how to shape them. Okay, so we got that. The one thing I do want to show you is how to make this fingernail long if you wanted a longer fingernail, say a female fingernail. The way to do that is to just go in here into face mode and select these faces here, and go to edit. Oops, somehow I got into surfaces mode. Edit mesh, extrude, go into world mode here and pop these babies out, and then there we go, we got a long fingernail. And again, you can shape that however you want. Alright, so that's it. I'm going to undo that long fingernail because that's not what I'm trying to do. And now that we have our middle finger model, we're to a point where we can go ahead and duplicate this finger and finish off the rest of the fingers for the hand. So all I'm doing here is I wanted to fatten my knuckles from the top view here as I looked at it, and so I did that. There we go, that looks good. If I select, go into object mode, select both these guys, hit 3. You can see here that it's starting to smooth nicely. That looks good. Right now, I think my finger's a little bit too flat, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to Modify, Center Pivot, Insert. I want to move this pivot to be back at the base of the finger. I'm going to hit Insert again. And then now, I'm going to just scale this guy up a bit, so that it is a little thicker and fits the hole that it's about to go into. Alright, so let's go ahead and go back to the control cages for both of these. And now what I want to do is I want to start duplicating this middle finger and positioning it. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the top view. And we modeled one finger and we just want to reuse it. So going to select it. I'm going to say Control D for duplicate, and I'm going to move it over here to the index finger. I'm going to hit the E key and rotate it into position. And now I want to scale it. The one thing about your fingers is, for your middle finger, your index finger, and your ring finger, they're all relatively the same size. So if you're going to uniform scale it, you don't want to do that too much, maybe just a little bit. And then you want to non-uniform scale it to get the length. That looks pretty good. Generally though, I'm going to keep these approximately the same size. I like to just scale it down a little bit uniformly, very little bit, and then non-uniform to get the length correct. Okay, and then I'm going to just, for the pinky however, pinky is a lot smaller than the rest of your fingers. So there you can do considerable amount of uniform scaling. What I like to do is just use the illustration. So once I uniform scale it down and the width is approximate to the image, then I go ahead and non-uniform scale for the length. Okay, and then now what we have here is we have all the fingers. The last thing I want to do is, if you'll remember, we put the arc here into the palm. So I want to just also put some arc into the fingers in terms of their position relative to each other and the palm. Kind of mirror that. It just gives it a little bit more of an interesting organic look. And then finally we need the thumb, and we are also going to get the thumb from the middle finger. So I'm going to select the middle finger, Control D, and then I'm going to go ahead and move it out. Now remember what I said before about the thumb appearing to only have 2 joints when it actually has 3. So the third one's down here, and the way it works out is that center knuckle there, the big knuckle on the finger, is the same as the joint there on the side of the thumb. Alright, so what we want to do here is actually I'm going to use this knuckle here as my guide, because you want that to fall right across there. And then this one, we could actually go into edge mode. I want to select this edge loop here. And for this thumb, that's probably too many edges for right now. So I'm going to go ahead and select those edges, and I just want to delete them. So I'm going to say Edit Mesh, delete Edge plus Vertex. And then now what I want to do is move my thumb into position, and I also want to rotate it down a bit. Actually, before I rotate it in that axis, your thumb is also at an angle which is about 45 degrees to the rest of your fingers. So in between 35 and 45 is a good number. So I'm going to rotate it down to about a negative 45, and I'm just going to see how that looks. And that looks pretty good. And we're going to go a little bit farther because this is important. We want this edge on the palm, so this edge coming around the palm of the hand, to sync up with this edge that runs down the center of the thumb. Alright? It's important to have that relationship, because when we go ahead and combine these later, that's going to be very important to the edge loop parameterization. The next thing we want to do is we just want to rotate the thumb down a little bit, like so. And that looks pretty good. Now we can probably move it up a bit. There we go. Fits into the opening. And at this point, now that we have everything positioned, we can go ahead and delete some of the faces off of the thumb itself. In this case, we want to delete all the faces that are on the back side of the thumb, just past this knuckle here. Alright? And that looks pretty good. Alright, now we're ready to go ahead and cut out these faces here for where my thumb is going to go into my mesh. And now I can go ahead and combine. So I go to Mesh, Combine. Now what I want to do is I want to weld all these vertices to each other. So I'm going to, this time I'm going to go ahead and move the vertices from my thumb here into the vertices on the palm of my hand. So I'm going to do that by going to Polygons, Edit Mesh, Merge Vertex Tool. And if you remember here, I said that this edge down the center of the thumb is very important that it coincides with this edge. So I'm going to make that connection first. Oops. And sometimes the graphics card doesn't know which vertex you want to move, so you're going to have to just move to a different vantage point. And I commonly do this. I don't know why I did again, but I had one more step to do before I needed to weld the thumb in, and that is I need to add another set of edges down the center of the thumb here, because currently my finger has too many edges versus my palm here. So I apologize, I should have done that. Sure, remember that. That's okay, I caught it early enough. So if this happens to you and you realize quickly that you're not going to have enough edges, all you have to do is go to Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop Tool, and just go ahead and insert another set of edges right down the center. That'll do it. That's all I needed. Now I go back to Object Mode, and I can go to Edit Mesh, Merge it, nope, wrong one. Edit Mesh, Merge Vertex Tool, and go right back to where I started here. And I'm just going to go all the way around here. This is an area where the transition can get a little bit wonky between the finger that you've welded in and the actual thumb. And really what you're going to have to do there is you're going to have to do a little bit of modeling to try to fix that transition a little bit more. In this case, I just like to select these vertices here, and I'm just going to rotate them a little bit, like so. And that's pretty good for now. I might take some of the hardness off. Like so. Now if you'll notice, there's a pretty big gap here, if I go into my top view, between my thumb and the palm of the hand. And what this is this represents kind of the meaty area, which is essentially webbing. Your thumb has a large amount of webbing between it than your other fingers do. And what I mean by webbing is the webbing. If you look at your finger from the top, put a ring on, and if you turn your hand over and look at the palm, you can see the ring touches the base of the palm. If you flip it over, there's a good probably about 3/4 of an inch between the two. And what that is that's the webbing. So what we're going to do here in order to compensate for that is you're just going to select these vertices here. Now that we've done this, and we're just going to pull those babies out to make up that meatiness of the inside of the palm. And I keep calling it meatiness, but it's really just the webbing of the palm itself. Be careful when you do this. I just pulled the wrong one. It's this set of edges here, so you're just going to follow the edge loop down, and so it goes to there. And so you want to be careful that you don't pull the wrong set of edges when you're going ahead and doing the webbing for any of the fingers for that matter. Okay. And we'll do it like that. Alright, and if I wanted to get a preview of that, we can see here what that looks like. Something like that. Alright, that's we've got a lot of erosion here from the poly control cage to the smooth view. See that erosion? And what we're going to do is we're going to fix that at the very end here by just adding more edges to the model. So I'll show you how to do that here in a second. Alright, so now that we've got the thumb welded on and we got the transition modeled a little bit better, I want to go ahead and grab these vertices here and pull them up. Like so. I want to carry the meatiness of my palm along the interior here of this row. Now would be a good time to grab these and pull those down a bit. There we go. We're getting a little bit more of a palm-like shape. And you just want to, look at your palm and see if that looks right. Want to be careful not to model in sub-D mode like I am. I'm doing it because I kind of know what I'm doing, but for you guys who are new to Maya, you want to be careful there. You can end up with a pretty ugly control cage if you're not careful. So what I like to do is just keep my manipulations pretty light. Don't move things a whole lot if you are going to pull points in your sub-D preview. All right. So there we go. That's looking better. Now I want to go ahead and I'm going to make a layer here for my fingers so that I can hide those. And we're ready to go ahead, and we want to first add some edge loops down the centers of the fingers so we have enough edges to actually weld those fingers onto the hand. So we're going to do that. First I want to delete the history. You can see over here to the side it's getting pretty detailed. A lot of junk in there, and I just want to get rid of that. So I want to go Edit, Delete by Type, History, get rid of that. And I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop Tool, and I wanted to open up the dialog for that, so I'm going to say Insert Edge Loop Tool, reset it, multiple edge loops, clicked, and one, and I just want these to be centered right down the edge of the hand. That looks good. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go into face mode, and I just want to shift select all the faces at the front of the palm here, and then I'm going to hit delete. And I'm just kind of looking around to make sure I didn't unintentionally delete a face, and I did. Easier way to do that would have been just for me to marquee select all of these faces, and then marquee control select to deselect the sides. And there we go. That looks good. Alright, now I can turn my fingers back on, unhide them, and I just want to go ahead and do weld these fingers one at a time. So I'm going to select the palm and my index finger, and I'm going to say Edit Mesh. Mesh, Combine, and then Edit Mesh, merge vertex tool. And then I'm just going to go around here like so. Now notice here that I stopped right there, and that's because, and I'm not going to do anything with that vertex because I don't actually have anything to merge the vertex to at this point. I need to combine my other finger before I can do that. So I'm going to just kind of weld all these fingers on and leave those interior vertices alone until I have all the fingers combined. So I could also do this in one step. So I just did that one individually. If you're a little bit more comfortable with Maya, you kind of feel like you know what you're doing, you could just select them all and you could say mesh combine and then reduce this to one step, and then we go to edit mesh, merge vertex tool, and just go all the way around here. Again, I'm leaving that middle vertex alone because I want to show you a different way to do it. Right now, if I were to merge these vertices, what will happen here using the merge vertex tool is I'll select one vertex and then it'll move it to the other one and kind of give me a wonky favor from one edge loop to the other, and I don't want that. So when I do merge these guys, I want to just average the distances between them. So I'm actually going to use a different tool to do that. Alright, so let's finish this off. I'm going to go ahead and go around the fingers, merge all these guys up, and then do the same thing here. I probably could have noticed that I could have moved my pinky in a little farther. I caught that too late, so my pinky is maybe a little out of step with my hand model, and I'm just going to leave it alone. Alright, so now I've got them all merged up. I'm going to go into object mode, and now what I want to do is I want to weld these vertices, but I'm going to use a different tool to do it. So I'm going to go into vertex mode. I'm going to select both these verts. Sometimes if you can't see the vertices you're selecting, it helps to go to wireframe, and then you can select them like so. And what I want to use here is a tool called merge to center. And what that's going to do is it's going to basically average the distances between those two vertices and move them to each other rather than favoring one to the next. So I just hit the G key and I want to show you guys how to do it. So select both the vertices, and again that was edit mesh, merge to center. And what it does is it averages the distances and moves the vertices to each other rather than one to the other. So go to edit mesh, merge to center, and much nicer transition. That looks pretty good. We've got quite a bit of history on our model here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to edit, delete by type, history. Now would be a great time to save. I probably should have been saving the whole time. I lost track of it because I was explaining myself while I was doing it. Okay, so now that we have our mesh built out here, we got everything combined. I just want to do a little bit more rudimentary shaping before we get into more advanced shaping in the next tutorial. Alright, so at this stage in the game your model is technically correct. What I like to do here is go ahead and finish off the webbing. So let's go ahead and do that. These sets of edges right here represent the webbing for the fingers. So what I like to do is select these vertices, whoops, right here, and then just move those up like so. Do it on this one as well. 1, 2, 3. Move it up. Okay. You can grab these verts right back here at the tops of the hand. It can also help to do this in the orthographic viewport. I'm just going to go ahead and pull those back. So I'm kind of using the perspective and orthographic viewports to manipulate vertices here. Reason for that is because, as you guys know by now, when you start pulling points in the perspective viewport, it can get a little out of hand on you really fast. So I'm just going to pull those back. That looks pretty good. And pull these back to be kind of on top of the knuckles. Alright. And then we can could try to finish the webbing here, but again, like I said, there's really not enough edges to really do that at this point in time. So I would want you guys to do a lot more shaping here from what I have, but we don't really have time in this tutorial to show that, so we'll just have to go ahead and say I want you to do that. And what I would do is I'd go ahead and start pulling verts now and shaping my model up considerably before I would move on to the next step.